Welcome to Connecting the Dots, a non-traditional legal program with your host and trusted advisor, Liz Myska, your guide through the web of life's dilemmas.
Welcome. On today's edition of Connecting the Dots, we will talk about advertising scams, tax scams, and appropriate financial and legal representation. My guest is Nancy
Cahalen.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yep.
She is the executive director of Central Massachusetts Better Business Bureau. Mm-hmm. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm delighted that you're here. A lot of people have received calls from the IRS demanding immediate payment. What do you think of that?
I got one of those too. A lot of people got them. They're robocalls, and just as a rule of thumb, if you get a robocall, just hang up. The IRS doesn't call you. They don't threaten you. That's not how you hear from the IRS. They'll send you a letter. If you haven't filed, if you owe money, that's how they get in touch. So these threatening calls, the plan is to get you a little off balance, so you'll give them information, either pay them money through wiring money or a green dot card, or you'll give them personal information, and then your identity will be compromised.
A green dot card. What is it?
That's the newest thing, because when wiring money, now there's another individual at the counter involved in that transaction, and those companies that do that are savvy to a lot of scams, and they're helping the consumer by pointing out that this could be a scam. So they're going with this green dot card, which is like a preloaded debit card kind of thing that you just buy and send. And so there's no clerk, no counter help, no one involved to ask you where that money's going. So it's just between that consumer and the scammer that's looking for the cash. They're just like cash. And once you either wire your money or send it on a green dot card, it's gone.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So how does the scammer approach the consumer with this kind of green dot scam?
Well, what they do, they'll do these robocalls to see if they can lure people in. They'll press the appropriate numbers on their phone because they're panicked and they think that they owe money, and then a live individual will engage them at that point and tell them, give them instructions on what to do. Usually that involves sending money. And you can't put it on a credit card, or because then it's fraud. You can get the money back. Mm-hmm. So they have to.
It has to be cash.
It has to be cash,
or
the equivalent, which would be either wiring the money or this new thing. It's fairly new, called the green dot card. So if you hear green dot card, your antenna should go up.
Okay. All right. So what advice would you give to consumers when they believe that they are the subject of identity theft?
Well, the first thing, you need to report it. You need to report it, and you need to have a report with your local police, because it is a crime. Because down the road, if fraud has happened and purchases have been made or accounts have been opened up under your name, you need to have a paper trail to say that you reported it and that you're taking the proper steps. The FTC website has some excellent guide on what to do if your identity has been compromised.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great advice, Nancy. Mm-hmm. Thank you. At the beginning of the program, we saw a clip with a yard sign depicting a dollar amount for tax returns. Mm-hmm. Could you comment on that type of a scam?
Wow, my BBB senses were tingling when I saw that, because that hits me on a number of different levels. The Better Business Bureau was founded in 1912 because of advertising claims and misrepresentation. So this particular advertisement claiming over $5,000 in refund, that's just to hook people and bring them in. It's kind of a bait and switch or an unsubstantiated claim. So you would need to get some kind of substantiation from that company. How can they promise you that kind of return? And I doubt they'd be able to provide that.
But isn't it prevalent? I would think that I myself receive faxes when the winter was so horrendous about roofers. There are, to my knowledge, lose weight fast, work at home, earn $10,000.
Yeah.
Aren't people very susceptible to that?
People are bombarded with these messages, and people generally think, oh, I'm too smart to fall for one of those, but they wouldn't continue doing it if they didn't reel in unsuspecting consumers at a pretty fast clip. So first thing, if you get something emailed to you, why would you respond to something offering legal help or some type of professional help that it's just sent to you through your email? That to me wouldn't be the way that I would pick a professional to help me in something important matter. Those faxes that were just faxed to machines all over the Northeast after this tough winter. Again, you didn't ask for that information. They're just sending it to you. I would be very suspect of anything like that.
Well, you've hit a subject close to my heart, being a lawyer, and advertising, because there are parameters that we lawyers are bound to. However, I would just like you to comment, since you mentioned lawyers, the types of scams or false advertising or on the line of those two topics that you personally have encountered.
Well, off the top of my head, I can't come up with a specific instance, but things like making promises that they really can't ensure. You can't ensure what direction a finding is going to go in. So making promises of results that they cannot substantiate. So those types of things we look out for. It's anything that seems too good to be true, Liz, generally isn't true. So that's really our rule of thumb.
At the Better Business Bureau, do you keep a list of accredited businesses? What is your vetting process? Mm-hmm. What would consumers be gaining by accessing your services?
Well, we actually report on all businesses, whether they're accredited with us or not. But the accredited businesses, we've screened them and approved them for accreditation. And they have promised to uphold our standards. And we have 8 standards, one of which is truthful advertising. Another one is being responsive if something goes wrong and there's a complaint. So they're all very good standards, ways that businesses should run their business every day. So if you come to the Better Business Bureau and ask for a list of accredited businesses for whatever it is you need done, you'll get a list of businesses that you can trust and that will do the right thing, even if things might go a little wrong.
I'm curious, are people that proactive? Do people wait until there's a complaint, or do they vet professionals prior thereto? What is your...
I am very pleased to tell you that complaints take up only about 2% of our time.
Really?
The other 98% is on providing information to consumers that are doing their homework. The information is readily available. Our information is free. It's accessible on the web at bbb.org 24/7, and they're doing their homework before they're making those important decisions.
That's a great statistic, Nancy, that it's so minimal, because I would have thought the opposite of that. So anything else that you would like to tell our viewers about the Better Business Bureau and other areas that might be of interest to consumers?
Well, until I came to work at the Better Business Bureau almost 7 years ago, I really had no idea of the depth of the services we provided. And this is one, getting the word out in the community. We report on businesses regardless of their accreditation status, so the information is easily accessible to consumers. We do proactive ad review. We review newspapers, websites, all kinds of advertising daily, just to find these instances where claims are made that can't be substantiated, and we challenge them with the businesses. And if they don't respond to us, we include that in their report online as well.
Could you just give an example of a business, without naming a business, that you...
Let's see. We have install these windows in your home and save 50% on your heating bill. Maybe you will save, but will you save 50%? How do they know? So we would challenge that with the business, and we would say, if you can't substantiate that, provide us some third-party test results that show you would save 50% on your heating bill. Then you're going to need to change that advertising so that it will fit our standards.
That prompts another question from me. Demographics. Would you say that it is the senior population that is more inclined to use your services? Would it be adult children of seniors who are more inclined to use your services? Or would it be the Generation X and below?
Well, surprisingly, we deal with all generations, but we connect with them in different ways. So Generation X, we have social media. BBB reports are very highly ranked in the organic results of any Google search, but seniors feel more comfortable talking to us, and we're available every day for them to call and get our take on something, and they do it. So,
thank you, Nancy.
Well, thank you.
Our second guest is Sean Doucette, financial advisor with American Financial Partners. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, Liz. I really appreciate this.
You just shared with me a scam that I would like you to share with our viewers.
Yes, thank you. I heard you talking to Nancy, and it reminded me of a scam I just recently went through where people called my business and they told me that my utilities were going to be shut off if I didn't pay an obscene amount of money. It was like $800, and I could pay it over the phone with a credit card, or I couldn't write a check, but I could, if I had a cash debit card or something like that, they would accept that. And what we discovered is that they were using Google and probably even Facebook, and they were looking up information because I was trying to confirm that this was the company. They were very convincing at first. And I discovered that they were able to find really good information about myself and the business using, publicly acknowledged information. It was out there. So I would definitely encourage your viewers to pay attention, and if somebody calls them, think that some of that information might just be public information and not to be susceptible to those kinds of attacks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When it happens to you yourself, you definitely sit up and take notice.
You do, yes.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I would like for you to discuss with our viewers financial representations, financial representatives, and let's talk about what financial representatives do for their clients.
It's a great question. Thank you. The word financial representative is a kind of a broad term. It's used in a lot of different ways. It used to be anybody that could go out and get a business card and put financial representative, and they could try to sell you pretty much anything. Now, what's happened is over the years, the government and the industry has tried to change, and they've made it harder for people to get into the industry who don't have the kind of background or the education or the certifications necessary. There are basically two entrances into the financial field that are very common. Either people who are in an insurance business or work for an insurance company, or people who are in the investment business or work for an investment company, and they tend to be focused on one side or the other. But either way you go, there are certain licenses and certifications that you do need to get along the way if you want to represent yourself today as a financial advisor. Terminology is really important in our industry. There's a lot of regulations. So if somebody calls themselves a financial representative, they may not have the right credentials to be an advisor, which is good because it separates people who've put in the time and the energy to become more educated and focused on their career.
How does a consumer tell the difference?
Tell the difference.
Is there something that signifies to a consumer, this is the person that I need, or is it just a hodgepodge for the consumer?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, ideally, if you want to work with the people who put the most into their career, the people who have studied the most and have the most knowledge and can prove it, you want to have people who have licenses to start with. First of all, a Series 6 or 7 would give them the ability to sell certain types of securities. A Series 65, 63, or a combination of the two is a 66. Those licenses give people the ability to give advice and to charge for that advice. And it actually holds them responsible for the advice that they give. Some people will need an insurance license if they want to sell insurance as well. But when it comes to designations, people who take the extra steps to get a little more education and to prove that they are taking their career to the next level may have designations like a CFP, which is a Certified Financial Planner. A CRPC is a Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor. There are a few other designations that are also acceptable, but those are the main ones that have said, I've worked a little harder than other people to advance my education in what I do. So those are things you can look for. Somebody who's been in the industry a while, and the financial industry is a tough one, and so if somebody hasn't been in the industry for more than a year or two, they're obviously young, they haven't started, or they just transitioned from something else. So somebody who's been in the industry over 5 or 6 or even 10 years is ideal, because they've been in the industry, they've been doing it, they've been making money at it, and they've proven that they can continue providing a good service.
I have a question about independence, and I have a question about licensure as
Sure.
well. So you are an independent
Yes.
financial representative. What's the difference between an independent and a non-independent, and what are the licensing requirements as well for someone as a consumer? Would I want to select someone who is unlicensed as opposed to someone who's licensed? Is there a price differential?
Right, that's a great question. So to start with, independent versus working with, say, a captive, agency or a firm. Independent advisors they're not working for a particular company. Very often, a large company like an insurance company will hire financial advisors, and they'll expect those advisors to
Sell
certain
products.
types of products, right? Push
Okay.
certain kinds of investments or lines. Now, somebody who works for a major firm, and I'm not going to name anybody, but just pick a financial or an investment, or I should say an insurance firm. They can still be really good at what they do, and they can provide a good service, and they might be the right fit for somebody. But for most people, they need sometimes more complex, or sometimes something a little different than is kind of the cookie cutter, we call it in the industry, cookie cutter solutions. And so an independent advisor has the ability to work with all kinds of different companies. They don't have to work with just this firm A or firm B or insurance company A or B. They can work with multiple different firms. And so when it comes to choosing the right product or the right solution or the right strategy, they can go to different places and find those products and services, and make it easier for the consumer to know that they've shopped around a little bit and not just sold you or suggested to you the products or solutions that are only available at one place.
I would like you to comment on licensure and non-licensure, but that also prompts a question that I posed to Nancy. What do you see as the demographics? Do you see that your clientele are mostly of a certain age, and is that over 50 or 65? What about the younger people? And how does it change dependent upon age, or does it change dependent upon age?
Right. Well, that's another great question, and I'll start with first the licensing. In the industry, again, I mentioned the Series 7, the stockbroker's license. The 6 is kind of a 7 junior. And then you have the licenses that you're allowed to then give advice, and you can charge a fee for giving financial advice. What's important about that, let me emphasize this. If you have the 66 or the 65 and 63 combination, this is giving you the right to give financial advice, but it also makes you a fiduciary. Now, that's an important term, because what that means is that the advisor who has those licenses, he can be held accountable for the advice that he gives you or she gives you. If your advisor gives you advice to say, buy this investment or buy this insurance product, and it turns out it was the wrong choice for you, and not because it lost money, I mean, everything can go up and down, but if it was just inappropriate, you were 85 years old and they're telling you to buy an aggressive fund or an aggressive stock, and it loses because that's what aggressive funds do sometimes, then they can go and say, that was inappropriate. So an attorney like yourself can say, you took advantage of my clients, and therefore they can go be sued. We can be brought against a committee that then decides that we made the wrong decision, and we have to have bonds that protect our consumers in case we do make those bad decisions. So somebody who has the right licenses is also insured, they're bonded, and they're held to a fiduciary standard to protect the consumers. Now, you said, what's the demographic? And this is actually kind of funny. I worked for a large financial institution, and they couldn't stop reminding us that there's a silver tsunami of investments, that the large majority of the wealth in America is held with people who are over 55. And so there's two situations we're looking at as financial planners, and that is, how do we help manage and protect the wealth that's been created for our over 55 population? And then how do we help that transition, which it will start to do, in the following years, to the younger generations who will be inheriting that wealth. And so we have to look at situations from different perspectives. If somebody comes to us who is younger and they say, I want to start building up my own portfolio, if they're 35, they just had kids, they need to be more aggressive, and we're going to take a more aggressive stance to their long-term goals. But if somebody comes in who is 55 or 60 and they say, what should I do to get through the next 25, 30 years of retirement? Well, we need to be more conservative. And so it's important that as a demographic, financial planners, and especially licensed and certified planners as well, that they have the ability to go in and assess a situation, assess a person's risk, and make appropriate suggestions for the long-term strategy that they're going to be using.
You're also bringing to mind, Sean, advertising, advertising and disclosure.
Yes.
It just, if you could comment on that, I would appreciate that.
Oh, yes, advertising and disclosure in the financial industry, those are, scary words. The reality is, the financial industry, we have to be very careful. I mean, in terms of the very words I use can be held against me. I can't write an advertisement and use the word solution, for example, because the word solution implies that there might be a guaranteed outcome at the end of this. I have to use words like strategy, because a strategy says we can try this approach, hopefully it works, but we can't guarantee anything. The only guarantees there are in the insurance industry, where you are paying an extra premium for a guarantee. And even then people say, well, what if the world falls apart? Well, yes, okay. But at the end of the day, for investments and financial planning, if anybody writes an advertisement and says, guaranteed percentage, you can get a return in your portfolio that's guaranteed at this. If it seems too good to be true, I think Nancy mentioned that, it probably is. If the government is paying, not even 1% on their safe investments, then if somebody tells you I can guarantee you 8% and not without any risk, then clearly there's a disconnect, so you have to watch out for that kind of.
And on your advertising for your firm,
Yes.
I recall you telling me that there's a litany of disclosures that thou shalt not, thou shalt.
Right. No, past performance is no indicator of future return. That's the standard. We can't promise anybody that what happens next year will be a reflection of what happened last year. What we can say is, if you assume that the future the next 20 years will look a lot like the last 20 years, and that includes wars and, problems in the economy and problems with oil and everything else. The reality is, life cycles. But if we say that you can assume that if you make that assumption, this is what we expect to happen. But we can't promise that, and we can't say, look, I returned last year 12% in a portfolio, I can do that again next year. That's a big no-no. In any type of financial advertising, there should be a list of disclosures, and there should be a section where you can go and check, who does this guy work for? Where does he clear his investments through? What firms are regulating what he's doing? And so that's an area where in any financial advertising, if you see that, you know that this firm is being held accountable. If you don't see any kind of disclosure, this probably wasn't an approved material, and it's probably trying to hide something from one of their compliance department.
I'm just curious, though, do you find, as a rule, that consumers actually do that? Do they understand the legalese, I think that's appropriate to call it, or do they just say, oh, here's a litany of again, thou shalt and thou shalt not?
Unfortunately, no. The reality is people aren't able to always look at the fine print. They make very emotional, quick decisions on what they see, which is the big numbers. And unfortunately, it just brings you back to the fact that the best way to find a financial advisor or a financial planner is with somebody who's had an experience with a financial advisor or planner. If you can get a referral from somebody who's had a really good experience and has had a long relationship with somebody, that's the best you can do. If you need to go to the website or Google or something and look them up, there's a lot of good information, but at the end of the day, don't rely on just the big, bold letters you see in an advertisement. Rely on your gut feeling, and also rely on the facts that are presented, and make sure that they stand up.
Thank you. Yeah. I would say that the theme of today's program was be a savvy consumer.
Exactly.
You need to not just read advertisements and believe. You need to probe to see whether or not they're accurate.
Absolutely, Liz. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. Remember, your trusted advisor is your counselor, guiding you through the most difficult choices. If you have any questions, I invite you to call me, Elizabeth Myska, attorney, at 508-753-7681, or visit my website, www.elizabethlmyska.com. Thank you.
Please note that the information provided in this show is not a substitute for consulting with an experienced local attorney and receiving counsel based on the facts and circumstances of a particular transaction. To contact Lizbeth, email her at lizbeth@elizabethlmyska.com or call her office at 508-753-7681. We're online at connectingthedots.lawyer. Executive producers, Lizbeth Myska and Jack Peacock. Producers, John Medberry and Bill Hamilton. A production of Elizabeth L. Myska, J.D., LLM, in association with Compliments.